Today's discussion begins, I guess, with this. We're gonna do this, and then we're gonna look at the. We're gonna look at also the post, the third-party tools post. We'll look at that. Is it a long one? Jesus Christ, it is. Okay, this is fine. We'll look at it. I'm gonna read through it. I'm gonna tell you my thoughts as we go through that. Because let me just preface this discussion by saying I have a very strong opinion when it comes to this type of stuff, because coming from a place where you essentially you have to use add-ons, and I know again, always some rando comes up. I don't have to. I never used add-ons. I did fine. And it's like, yeah, sure, dude, yeah, sure. And I get tired of listening to people like that. So if you're that person, do us all a favor and shut the fuck up. Nobody believes what you're saying. And everybody knows that if you're not using it, then your raid leader is using it, or you're looking at logs, or you're doing some whatever. Doesn't matter. Okay? Regardless. Right? Regardless of all that. It's like I'm someone who came from that environment where you essentially are expected to use mods like DBM, and if you're in certain more hardcore raiding guilds, you're expected to use weak auras that make things even easier. Those of you who don't know what DBM is, it's a mod for World of Warcraft called Deadly Boss Mods, which is essentially something extremely similar to what you see here, which I might bring up later. Basically, it gives you like the timings of the abilities when they're going to be happening. It tells you where to stand, so like on here, die on left blue. It tells you, cooldowns of everything. It basically tells you way more information than you'll need. And some people might be like, well, what's the problem of this, right? What's the problem of these add-ons? The problem is that add-ons can basically simplify mechanics to an extent where the developer then starts feeling the need to make more and more complex mechanics, which the add-on developers then feel the need to make more and more complex add-ons to simplify those complex mechanics. And it's just a never-ending war where the players are constantly losing, particularly newcomers, because newcomers will then be expected to just install a million add-ons just to be able to effectively raid, because if you don't install those add-ons, the mechanics are going to be so complex because the mechanics are designed with the add-ons in mind that it's going to be a serious problem. This is why, me coming from that environment and then raiding in Final Fantasy XIV was incredibly refreshing, because I don't need any of that. Like, give you guys an idea, at this point, we are progressing through P4S, and, I'm by no means, I'm like, oh, god tier raider, anything like that, right? But we're progressing through P4S, we've done P3S, and all of that I've done without a single add-on. You don't need add-ons. The problem is, if Square Enix allows this type of stuff, like this type of stuff here, become the norm, then there will be a time where your players will need add-ons, and that is going to be particularly negative towards their fan base that happen to play on console. Because for those who don't know, 14 is both on PC and console. And you're not going to be able to install add-ons on console. It's just that simple. You can't do that. And not to mention, I don't think Yoshi P wants to put himself in a situation where, even if it was just on PC, your players are expected to install these add-ons to be able to perform, because they'll have to design around these add-ons. And that is the biggest problem of the add-ons. But anyways, let's take a look at this news report here on Games Radar, which says Final Fantasy XIV squad gets world first raid clear, then Square Enix deletes their video. World's first Final Fantasy XIV team to beat the Dragon Song Reprise Ultimate Mission has been congratulated by having their video deleted by Square Enix. Over the weekend, the first team to beat the incredibly tough and unforgiving Dragon Song Reprise Ultimate in Final Fantasy XIV emerged. Square Enix and game director Naoki Yoshida briefly congratulated the team in a news blog post, but it now emerges that the YouTube video featuring the clear run has been DMCA'd by the developers. So for starters, there's one thing here that I am going to give Square Enix, Creative Business Unit 3, whoever the fuck made the decision to use the DMCA system, I'm going to give them shit. That is not right. That's just not right. to take a video down based on DMCA when they haven't broken copyright. Because apparently people are saying that, again, I don't know the reason why they did it, but I'm assuming, considering that Square Enix has a very open policy when it comes to streaming their games, otherwise I would not be able to stream, right? Because I stream 14 all the time. You know, like I'm streaming remixes of their music right now. You guys can hear it on stream. Hopefully it's not overbearing, by the way. I didn't really test the volume. It's a little bit overbearing. I'm gonna reduce a little bit. Sorry about that, guys. I was distracted. Growing pains of the new setup and all that. But as I was saying, is like you should never, ever, ever DMCA a video unless it actually breaks copyright, which I don't think that the video in question breaks copyright because it's gameplay. Now, the problem is this is the fastest way of taking down a video on YouTube, but it's still copyright abuse. So at the end of the day, my stance on that is going to stand firm. It's like, sure, take the world first from them if that's the decision that you want to make, and, you know, ban the players, do whatever the hell you want because they were using third-party tools, whatever. Do whatever the hell you want with that. But DMCAing a video on YouTube, big no-no. 1,000% disagree for me, 1,000% disapproval. No, you do not DMCA a video unless there's a copyright, an actual copyright problem, which is not the case. To give you guys an idea, I still have unresolved, not DMCA takedowns, but content ID problems of people basically stealing revenues from my videos because of the fact that the system is so easy to abuse. And I really don't like seeing, you know, publishers abuse this because, you know, you push this too far and eventually what's going to happen is creators are not going to want to stream your game. Like, this to me is a big knock. And again, this isn't even related to the topic at hand. I just need to bring that up because the MCA is a very big deal for me. Anyway, the first teams to clear Dragon Song's Reprise Ultimate have emerged. Congratulations for those of you who are still progressing. Good luck as you continue pushing at your own pace. We'd like to add something about third-party tools, so please read our next tweet. Let me actually look at that. We noticed that some discussions about the validity of third-party tools and would like to reiterate our stance against the usage of such tools. We ask you to check the following statement of producer and director Naoki Yoshida. Thank you. We'll be checking that out after we get through this. The timing of the clear and Square Enix's blog post railing against third-party software can't be overlooked. Right now, it's not yet clear why the YouTube video has been taken down by Square Enix, but one popular community theory, which has credence in the post decrying third-party tools, is that the team were using software to manipulate the game's UI. If you're unaware, modding Final Fantasy XIV's UI via third-party software isn't actually that uncommon, and teams trying to be the first to clear a tough challenge like Dragon Song Reprise Ultimate will install software which tells them which way to run to dodge certain boss mechanics in the mission. For example, this helps the team, but it's in direct violation of the rules laid out by Square Enix. Now, here's something that you need to understand, okay? Before these raids are released in Final Fantasy XIV, there is a team of 8 people that run the raid. This is not like World of Warcraft where shit gets on the PTR and then they wait until top tier guilds clear the content and give them feedback on how hard it was and all that shit, and then they do the adjustments as they watch as these world first guilds take on the content. In Final Fantasy XIV, there's an actual team of people that test this shit out and they run the raid to make sure that it is clearable. Right? So it's just a matter of trial and error, trial and error, trial and error until you get it right. That's what is expected of people to do. So considering that the raid is clearable, you don't need these tools. You do not need these tools to clear this content. The reason people do it is because it makes it easier. It just makes the content easier to do because you get warnings in advance letting you know, okay, this thing's happening, that thing's happening, the other thing's happening. And now that there also comes a discussion, which we'll be talking about later, which I saw on Reddit, of people saying, well, Discord's also a third-party tool. And it's like, come on, this is humans communicating. It's like, come on. Anyway. Besides the point, you know, I personally don't agree with people using add-ons that affect combat. This is the important distinction to make. Add-ons that affect combat. Add-ons that make combat easier. That is what I have a problem with, personally. And, you know, to each their own, do whatever you want. But the fact of the matter is, Square Enix's stance on this is that add-ons, period, like blanket statement, you shouldn't be able to use them. Now, I don't necessarily agree with that. I think ACT, just in terms of tracking your damage, is fine, because I can tell you right now, I've improved a lot as a player by being able to check and experimenting with different rotations and, you know, different timings on some of my abilities, using the logs provided by ACT. I'm not necessarily against that, but I am 1,000% against whenever the add-on just straight up tells you this ability is about to happen. I don't like that. If the add-on's telling you you should run to the left, it's like, no, I want to look at the situation and figure out where I'm supposed to go. Like, for instance, P4S, there's a point at which the boss does something that says north something. I forget what the name of the thing, but it basically tells you a cardinal point, and that means the boss is going to move to that cardinal point and do an ability. So you have to look at the boss and see if his cloak is glowing or if his rapier is glowing, because that means that he's either going to do a cloak attack, which is a knockback, or a rapier attack, which is a slashing attack and requires you to position yourself on the side of the boss. So you need to know that, and you also need to actually look at the map and figure out, okay, which direction is north? North is this way. I got to go north. And I have to go north, and you either have to stand in front of the boss if he's doing the knockback, or you have to stand on the side of the bosses if he's doing the rapier, and all of that requires you to basically look at the boss, look at which part is glowing, look at the map, see which direction you have to move to, also look at which ability is being cast before that, because there's going to be an ability being cast, it can either be spread, stacked, whatever, so that you know what you're doing immediately after the boss does that. And also, after he performs all these abilities, there's a tank swap that we have to do. So I'm also going to have to instantly, after all these things are resolved, tank swap, because I need to take a tank buster for the other tank. And I think it's cool for you to figure out all of those mechanics and apply all those mechanics when it could be extremely simplified by an add-on basically shouting the following words: north, rapier, stack. Like, if the add-on would just tell you these 3 words, it would simplify the thing to the point where I don't have to look at the boss. I don't have to look at the map. Well, I still have to look at the map to figure out north or whatever. But it's like, I don't have to look at the boss. I don't have to look at which ability is being cast. I don't have to pay attention. I don't have to figure out which square is safe to stand in. I don't have to do any of that, because the add-on will just be like, north, rapier, stack, or north, rapier, spread. Like, you can't deny that this fundamentally changes the dynamic of the fight. And that's why I personally have a problem with this situation. It looks like this group was using something like that, something like this. I'm assuming, because I didn't actually see the video, but it seems that that is what people are talking about, and that is the discussion being had. So let's take a look at what Yoshi P says in regards to that. Hello, this is Naoki Yoshida, producer and director of Final Fantasy XIV. With the release of patch 6.11 and Dragon Song Surprise Ultimate, we've heard concerns from players about the use of third-party tools and the potential for game server emulation. Okay, so this is something that I've heard. I don't know how this stuff, you know, what people are doing with this stuff, but what I've heard is that people are like running private servers to test out, you know, to like make their characters be God mode and then just see the whole fight so that they can figure out the mechanics ahead of time and then apply it to live. I've touched on these topics previously in live letters, but it's like, I don't know if that's the case or not. That's my interpretation of like when they're talking about potential game server emulation. Naturally, this is terrible because, say for instance, right, you have 2 teams that are running the ultimate, and one of the teams just goes ahead and emulates the server, God modes the fight, figures out all of the abilities that are going to be happening throughout the fight, whereas the other team is figuring out the fight as they go along. Like, this isn't even a race. This is somebody on a motorcycle and somebody else on a fucking wheelchair. This is the comparison between these 2 teams due to their different approaches. Now, I'm not someone that's going to be going for these races and whatnot because A, I'm not skilled enough. It's just that simple. And B, I don't have enough time to put into the game to do that. But if I was, and for the people that are interested in going in blind and do, well, this is essentially the same situation that, again, I got away from, which was bosses would be shown on PTR, which is a public test realm, which is essentially they would test out the bosses in the public test realm so people could fight against the bosses before they were released into a live environment. So the fights would be figured out. This is the eternal discussion about MMOs being figured out before they actually release, which is just a bad thing. Because, like, where's the sense of adventure if everybody already knows what is happening? In the case of World of Warcraft, if you think about it, like, where's the sense of adventure in World of Warcraft if you can basically go to Wowhead and see literally everything about the game before the game even releases? You can see all of the quest lines, you can see all of the loot, you already have guides explaining to you what is the best way to min-max your character before the game even releases. Like, where's the fun in that? Where's the sense of adventure? Where's the unknown? Like, what kind of gaming experience are we having nowadays where it's like the game is figured out, we're just executing? It's like, dude, if the game's already figured out, why the fuck am I playing it? Like, actual question. Like, a lot of us in my static group, we go through the raids and we don't look up guides unless, you know, let's say we've spent 2-3 months going through a boss. And it's like, okay, clearly we're not figuring this out by ourselves. Let's go look at a guide or whatever. But we at least put in the effort for quite a few prog sessions to try and figure out the mechanics by ourselves and try to come up with strategies by ourselves. And that is the adventure part of the MMO, is figuring out things by yourself as you are experiencing it, you know? Ruri, it's clear we're both old. The real problem is people don't like to communicate. I really don't like that approach, because it's like, I mean, this is a very doomer approach. And I know that I sometimes take it and it's like, oh man, maybe I'm just too old. Maybe it's whatever. I hate that. I wish that things would, you know, people would learn to just enjoy things again. But I've touched on these topics previously in live letters, but I would like to take this opportunity to formally address them. Please note that this will be a lengthy post containing difficult technical terminology and may not be of interest to the average player. Moreover, this announcement is meant to be read in its entirety, so I ask that you please refrain from sharing excerpts of this text out of context. Oh wow, Yoshi P already expecting people to quote him out of context. Use of third-party tools. Stated in the terms of Final Fantasy XIV, the use of third-party tools is strictly prohibited. Players who are determined to be using third-party tools will have their accounts suspended or permanently banned for repeated offenses. We have received requests from players asking that we define what tools are and aren't permissible, but to do so would require an assessment of all third-party tools available on the internet, as well as all gaming devices and their functionality. Unfortunately, such an undertaking is physically impossible, which is why we decided to simply prohibit the use of all third-party tools and software. See, I disagree a little bit here. I feel like there could be a stance. The problem is naturally this has to go through legal, and legally, you know, it has to be super well defined. But I kind of feel like if let's just put our reasonable hats on, if we can all just be reasonable, I think it's very easy for us to define what is okay and what is not okay. So if you want to use G-Shade to change the way that you view the game, I kind of feel like that's fine. If you want to use ACT to call out boss abilities as they're happening, kind of feel like that's probably not okay. Just going to throw that out there. If you want to use ACT to call somebody out on having bad DPS, I think that's obviously not okay. It's about being reasonable. It's about like anything that can essentially affect the difficulty of a fight should not be allowed. Any third-party tool that affects the difficulty of a fight should not be allowed. And ACT CACBot, like this thing, clearly affects the difficulty of a fight. I don't think anybody can tell me that, oh, that doesn't affect the difficulty of the fight at all. Are you sure about that? I mean, you got timers for everything. Are you crazy? Like, you got the add-on literally telling you where you're supposed to go. You have a countdown timer for everything that the boss is going to do. Right? You know? So that's my thought on that, pretty much. So again, I feel like they could define it as in tools that directly impact the difficulty of encounters are not allowed. Anything that directly impacts the difficulty of an encounter is not allowed and therefore deleted. You know, people get banned, whatever. You want to, like, you know, make your character naked, do some crazy shenanigans as you go down the road of ERP, whatever, so long as it's being done by consenting adults, you do whatever the hell you want. But I think that there are some clear limits that we can define here. By the same token, it is impossible for us to check which programs are installed on every player's PC. This is why we cannot identify and reprimand offenders 100% of the time. To offer more clarity on our process, here are a few examples of rule violations we prioritize for investigation. Use of tools that allow players to more easily complete content. Exactly what I said. Exactly what I said. And I 100% agree with them on this. I 1,000% agree with them on this. And I think they should most definitely enforce this shit. Because listen, and trust me, I know that there's a lot of people that are upset out there right now. Trust me, you do not want this to become the norm. Take it from someone who's been on the other side. You do not want this to become the norm. Because eventually this gets to a point where the barrier to getting started in raiding is so high that raids will be developed for like 10% of your player base. Whereas right now, I would argue, a great majority of the player base, if you want to do raids, like say on normal difficulty or whatever, anybody can go and do them. Once you allow third-party tools to become the norm, you're fucked. You're essentially just, the encounters are going to have to be designed with these third-party tools in mind, and therefore they're going to have to make them harder and harder and harder and harder and harder to the point where, again, if you are not using these, you're screwed. I mean, just think about it like this. When you go into Party Finder, what do you usually see? You see people telling you, go watch this video. The next step of that is people telling you, go watch this video and install this add-on. That's the next step of where this is going to go if you allow this to become the norm. So I want people to really just think about this and really just try to figure out if this is the direction that they want to go. And I'll tell you right now, if this is the direction we're going, I think that I'm just, okay, I guess I'm just done with MMOs. Like, that's it. I've been on the cusp of quitting on MMOs entirely. Not just because of this, because of other reasons, but stuff like this, it's taken me there, man. Modification of the UI to display additional information. Yep, that's another one. Use of packet spoofing tools. What the hell is this for? This seems like some hardcore cheating. Packet spoofing tools? Any actions or public statements that promote the use of third-party tools. And again, see, this is why people are still not posting it in their thing. If they allow this, people will be like, okay, make sure to install this add-on. That's going to make things easier, and we can just clear the content. All reports of such activity warrant investigation. Accounts determined to be in violation of the game service will be suspended or banned unless there is a significant change to the terms of service, which would be publicly announced. This rule remains as is. Hacks, mods, and risk of infection from malicious software. Hacks are alterations of a program that can allow for otherwise impossible things to happen. Final Fantasy XIV, which relies on server-client communication, hacking is much more difficult than in other online games. Moreover, our security measures are being improved upon constantly, and we will continue to bolster them in the future. Supplementary tools known as mods, however, can do a number of things, such as display additional information sent by the FF14 servers on screen, or send false packet information to change the location of characters. This is probably what they mean by packet spoofing tools. In the case of the latter, we have systems in place to automatically check and inspect system logs, allowing us to immediately take action against cheaters when discovered. Delete their accounts. If someone is caught using this isn't even like something that requires investigation. Delete their accounts, like actually delete them. Like make a public event where you shoot their character in the face in the public square and just remove them from the community. Just delete it. Delete it. That's just the way that I do it. And here's the thing about this one, because people are like, oh, third-party tools, they're fine. And yet, when people are cheating on PvP, everybody's like, hey, man, that's not right. Hey, what the fuck, man? People are like automatically using limit breaks when I'm in kill range. Oh, I don't like that at all. Oh, I see how it is. So it's not okay for people to cheat in PvP, but it's okay for people to use shit like ACT callouts and whatnot in PvE. Is it okay to use speed hacking in PvE? Because that's something that people have been doing in PvP. Like, where exactly are we drawing the line here? That is the problem, right? Anyway, continuing on, just I guess the latter is, in short, the use of such tools will not allow players to automatically clear high-end content, yet carries a high risk of being penalized, so we ask that you refrain from using them. We received many inquiries regarding infection by viruses and spyware that steal passwords after downloading third-party tools and plugins. Good, fuck you, lose your account. It did, if I was somebody that was like working at consumer, consumer support or something like that, and someone was like, oh, I downloaded this software and it stole my password, now I can't access my account again, I'm like, good. We didn't want you here anyway, bye. Hang up on them. To keep your system secure, that's why I can't be working in customer service. To keep your system secure, we ask that you exercise judgment and refrain from needlessly downloading third-party tools or software from unknown origins. Like, listen, this is them saying it's not our job to fix your fucking PC because you wanted to install a third-party bullshit add-on that made things easier for you. The game is perfectly playable as is, and it's not our job to fix your shit after you fucked it up. That's pretty much what they're saying here in more polite terms. Enhancements to the HUD and other UI elements. We believe that people use the aforementioned tools to expand the HUD and display more information because they feel that existing functions are insufficient for tackling high-end duties. In recognition of this, we intend to review the most prominent tools and in order to discourage their use, endeavor to enhance the functionality of the HUD. Though it will take some time, we're determined to make it happen, not least for the benefit of those who play on consoles. Exactly. I mean, here's the thing. Out of all the things that I've done so far, which again, like I said, I'm currently progging P4S, the default UI is fine. But I don't know Ultimates. I haven't done Ultimate, so I can't really pronounce myself on that. But, them improving the UI, that's a good thing. High-end duties and world races. It goes without saying that we're aware of world races for high-end duties. As developers, we're proud to have grown into one of the few games where they're held, and it delights us to see so many players participate as well as spectate with great interest. But a race should be fair, and it's our earnest wish that participants don't use third-party tools. Indeed, we've only released duties that have proven can be beaten with the game's standard features. This is the key thing. They test this. They cleared it with a team. Without a doubt, patch 6.11 Dragon Song's Reprise is the hardest duty we've ever created. Some may compare it to the unending Coil of Bahamut, but taking into account our players' improved skill, the increased number of actions, and the more complex mechanics, this latest Ultimate entry has the edge. To be able to conquer it in such a short time requires great individual prowess, teamwork, and support, and you can consider this gamer thoroughly impressed. Because such races are unofficial, we usually limit our involvement to some comments after a number of teams have cleared the duty by offering our congratulations via the official Twitter account and confirming timestamps. We want to recognize your achievements and contribute to the community excitement. However, if our recognition encourages excessive competition and controversy to the extent that players resort to third-party tools, I regret to say we may have to reconsider making comments in the future. That's what you get. Data mining and screenshot leaks. Fuck them all. Due to the oversight of the development team's part, model data for Dragon Song's Reprise was present in patch 6.08 data. The data was mined and the appearance of the raid's final boss was made public. Such data is normally masked and cannot be discovered, but this time it slipped through our checks. In addition, at virtually the same time the patch was released, a screenshot from phase that players had yet to reach was leaked. We believe it came from an insider and are in the middle of a thorough investigation. Fire this person from a cannon. We refrained from making this known earlier because it would make the investigation more difficult if the suspect were aware of it. Such leaks are utterly unacceptable, for they not only undermine the efforts of the development and operation teams, but also take away from players' enjoyment. True. Next subject. Previously, when a major leak occurred prior to the release of Shadowbringers, we succeeded in identifying the culprit and took legal action. There has been another leak despite this is deeply concerning, and in addition to bringing the offender to account, we'll take measures to prevent a repeat of the situation. You're goddamn right, dude. Legal action. I 100% agree with this. Hey man, it is what it is. Now, be it graphical resources or something else, there may be legal ramifications for mining private data via illicit means with the intent to make it public. Perhaps due to high interest, however, we've been seeing websites that openly release mined graphical data. I mean, dude, just look at Wowhead, man. As a show of our admiration for those who clear ultimate raids, we designed their reward weapons to be as eye-catching as possible, and to widely spread their images outside of the game could diminish players' motivation to earn them. I've made this request before and make it again. Please refrain from disseminating mined data. Server emulation. The leaks outlined above have led some to speculate that groups may have used server emulators to figure out the progression timeline for this battle. However, Final Fantasy XIV is run by a variety of independent programs operating on a multitude of specialized servers, so to completely emulate its server environment outside of our infrastructure is impossible. It would cost tens of millions of yen just to obtain the necessary servers. Without these servers and their proprietary programming, while one could potentially pull the client software and display model data and the like, the game itself will not operate. Even if one were to somehow accomplish such a feat, it would be physically impossible to run the unique programming introduced to the servers upon the application of each patch before the patch is even released. The progression timeline for each duty exists solely within this server-side code and is never included in the patch data downloaded to players' clients. I apologize for any undue concern caused by these rumors, which themselves were sparked by the aforementioned leaks. Once again, assure you that we will conduct a full investigation to prevent this from happening in the future. It's at least good to see that they're taking this shit seriously. They're not messing around. Thanks to our devoted Warriors of Light, Final Fantasy XIV has grown into a titan among games. This means that it is now home to players from all walks of life. And not just longtime Final Fantasy XIV fans, but those who have recently come to join us from myriad other game communities as well. Many more eyes are on Final Fantasy XIV, and posting about it garners a great deal of attention, which has changed how information is shared online and spreads throughout the player base. With this in mind, I'd like to encourage the development of a strong Final Fantasy XIV community by continuing to provide commentary as I have today. Truly, I cannot apologize enough for the many mistakes we made in 6.1 and the resulting disappointment in such a major patch. Nevertheless, we intend to forge ahead so that Final Fantasy XIV can continue to bring joy to as many players as possible, and we hope you stay with us on this journey. One thing that was not addressed, the DMCA takedown, which I feel should have been addressed. Because like I said, if there is no copyright infringement, they need to release the DMCA on that video. Like, I may not like what they've done, what they're doing with using third-party tools and whatnot, but my strong stance on the DMCA is the same. Has there been a copyright infringement? No. Release the video. Let them have the video public. It's that simple. I don't care. I don't care. Listen, I really don't care. I get that they don't want that footage shown, but guess what? The game was live. The add-ons were live. You didn't take action. They did this. And DMCAing is you shouldn't go that route. It's just that simple. It is just that simple. Now let me see what you guys have to say about this. Damage meters is a self-improvement tool. See, that's the thing. Damage meters, I don't think that a damage meter will affect the fight in a significant way. A damage meter affects self-improvement. That's why I'm not against damage meters. I think damage meters are fine. Right? Because a damage meter doesn't by itself, just the damage meter functionality of it does not tell you when an ability is about to happen. It doesn't tell you where you should move when the boss casts ability X. It doesn't tell you any of these things by itself. It tells you how much damage are you outputting. As a matter of fact, I wish there was a built-in damage meter in the game. But I know they don't want to do that because obviously, given the opportunity, people will be fucking toxic. But I don't think they should take a hard stance on the damage meter side of things. I think they should take a hard stance on this side of things. Like, this is bullshit. This is bullshit. It's that simple. This is bullshit. And if you need this, are you really rating? Or is the add-on doing it for you? At which point does it stop being somebody rating and starts being the add-on solving mechanics for you? You know? That's what I'm saying. Actually, this is a really good idea here. Like this one right here. To think all Square Enix really had to do is give us the in-game version of ACT exclusively for Savage, Extremes, and Ultimates. Yeah. Instead of having like a permanent DPS meter, just put it on Savages, Extremes, and Ultimates. Because that is, in reality, the only time where the DPS meter matters. And to some extent, not even an extreme that much. But Savage and Ultimates, sure, that's when DPS matters. So it's like, you don't need ACT to do your fucking expert roulette, because it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter at all. But for Savage and Ultimate, yeah, you kind of, it's useful to have it. You don't, again, you don't need to have it. It's very useful to have it. At the end of the day, like, look, I understand I've only been with the Final Fantasy XIV community since like 2019, which has been like 3 years. And I understand there's probably people, I don't know if in this chat or whatever, if in a video that potentially goes onto my channel, I don't know if there's going to be people there that have been with the community for much, much longer. Wait, let me swap this. But let me just tell you guys from my experience as someone who came from World of Warcraft, you really don't want to see what happens when you go down this rabbit hole. When you go down the add-on rabbit hole, when you go down this rabbit hole over here, can I aim here? When you go down this rabbit hole, you don't want to see where this rabbit hole leads. Because I've been down that rabbit hole. Okay? I've been down that road. And I can tell you that this does not lead to a place that you're going to like. For starters, you're going to start alienating a huge part of your player base. I don't know what's the percentages versus people that play on PC versus PlayStation. But I can assure you that you're going to get to a point where basically playing from PlayStation is not going to be viable to do Savage content if you keep using add-ons like this, because the Savage content and Ultimate content will have to take the add-ons into consideration. It will have to take the add-ons into consideration, and therefore it will become harder and harder for you to... Damn, that really... It'll become... Fuck you laughing at? Yes, Stunlock. As I was saying, it's like, if you go down this road and they have to develop the fight stick and the add-ons into consideration, they're going to escalate the difficulty to the point where it becomes inaccessible for players not using add-ons. It's that simple. For a majority of players not using add-ons. Sure, there's going to be some Giga Chad brain out there that's like, I don't need add-ons. I'm like the guy from Rain Man. You can drop the box of toothpicks and I'll tell you how many toothpicks are in there. It's like, you know, that's the thing. And so eventually console players will just straight up not be able to participate in that content. And I know that there's probably going to be some people saying, okay, dude, how many console players are actually progging Savage and Ultimate? And it's like, well, I've progged Savage in my PlayStation 5. It's fine. Not a problem. Been progging Savage on my PC without any of these bullshit add-ons. Not a problem either. But it will eventually become a problem if you keep going down the rabbit hole. So that's what you got to take into consideration. But yeah, I think you shouldn't go down that road, but you know, you guys do you, because like I said, I've only been a part of the community for 3 years. And if eventually it goes down that road and I feel like, hey, you know, maybe rating's just not for me anymore because everybody expects you to do this. It's like, I've done this. I've done this thing in the past. It wasn't fun. It wasn't fun. You guys want to know? You guys want to know what the evolution of that is? Let me show you what the evolution of that is, okay? Let me show you what the evolution of that is, where that ends up in. This is where you're headed. This is where you're headed, right? This is the type of UI that you want to have with all of the warnings and your aggro and all of this bullshit. This is where you're headed right here, right? Raid control, all these buffs and quests. There's a little bit of gameplay in the middle of this UI. And again, here, same thing. Like, this one's actually pretty clean when you think about it. This one's actually kind of all right. You can kind of see things a little bit. You got this one too. Like, look at these frames, baby. That's what I'm talking about right there. This is what you're looking for. Okay? This is where you're headed if you keep going down this road. This is where you're headed. A million different add-ons like plastered all over your fucking UI to the point where you can't see shit. This is where you're headed. So I hope people take that into account.